joining me on Ask a Therapist.
Thank you for asking me to join you.
Anytime. I'm Lila Galustian. I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist and the owner of Rediscovering You. And Tia, who are you?
I'm Tia Jacopelle. I am a hairstylist out in LA, specifically in braiding.
Yes. Love it. Do you have an Instagram?
I do. 1111 hair.
Okay.
Yes.
Well, welcome to Ask a Therapist.
Thank you.
I hear you came prepared with questions.
Yes. Are you ready?
I'm very so ready.
In depth.
I love it.
So we're going to get to the nitty gritty.
Okay.
Okay. You want me to start off with the first one?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. So the first one is, many people wonder how their early experiences shape their mental health as adults. Can you explain how childhood experiences influence our behavior and emotional well-being later on in life?
Oh my God, yes. So this is like in depth.
Yes.
This is like
come on, we're deep over here.
I know, I knew you were going to bring in the deep today. This is like me having to explain the science and the emotional and then the supernatural, which tends to be the spiritual of the aspect. So one thing is when we're born with emptiness, like in our brain. When we come out, there's emptiness, but there's so many studies and experiences about babies in the womb and how while the mother is carrying the baby, all the experiences that they're going through does help shape some of the emotional parts of the baby, right? And then we also have genetically from both parents, you have genetical things that get passed on, and it's not necessarily it doesn't have to be generational. If the generational stuff is still in the genetics, it'll get passed on. It's kind of like, you know, when they say a baby's eye color can be either parent's eye color, right? And sometimes like it could skip a kid and go to the next one. Those the emotional and mental genetics too, and the memories, all of that, same concept.
I'm gonna add to this question. Do you feel like it's not seen enough where people speak about how it trickles down from generations?
I think people don't focus on that as much.
Right.
People forget that it really is generationally, things get passed on. Like I come from an Armenian heritage, right? So in the Armenian heritage, if we kind of look at it in a certain time frame of that background, like in 1915 when there was this genocide happening to all the Christians, where it was the Armenians, the Greeks, and the Assyrians. These things have like people during that time, their coping mechanism and the way they had to do survival genetically kind of got built in their neural pathways, right? So within Armenian genetics, you'll have similar anxieties, and Armenians exist all over the world. So you see it even if they come from a different culture, like I'm Persian Armenian, and you'll have like a Greek Armenian or a Lebanese Armenian, and you'll still see similar anxieties that exist. Like things have to be very clean. They have certain things within them, and these are generationally passed down. And we justify these generational pass downs as like the way the culture is supposed to be. But what you don't understand is as a child, one, you already have these genetics inside of you, and then you add the nurture aspect of growing up, right? So when a child comes into life, how it starts being loved and how the parents are loving each other and how the relationship with family system, all of these get stored in the memory. So this is the science part where we have the memory in the brain. The brain is the smartest organ and the dumbest organ, but also the smartest organ. And as it's developing, every coping mechanism comes from the memories. So when a child is watching two parents fight, that goes in the memory. They don't necessarily fully grasp all these things. If the child watches two parents being lovey-dovey, that goes in the memory. So it starts creating this like sense of safety in the body.
From the emotional responses.
Right. And then as like they're starting to mimic parents' emotions and they're starting to mimic things. And sometimes people are like trying to overdo those mimicking, and the baby has no clue what you're doing. They're just staring at you, learning from you. So sometimes you might overdo it and this baby learns how to overdo it. You might underdo it and this baby learns how to underdo it. So all of these factors, and then they start getting to a point where they start having friendships and they start learning how to behave. And there's a phase where they are bullies as babies, right? Like when they're in preschool, they bite, they kick, they throw tantrums. And these are the phases where you start teaching them how to regulate like animalistic behavior, which we all have because we are also animals. And how you teach them to regulate that, how you help them understand what's right or wrong versus with fear, with shame, with like patience, with understanding, with anger, all of these things start developing a child, and all of these things are what, as you start developing in time, then you go into middle school, then you go into high school, and then as you're developing, you have like your first sexual crush experience and what that is like, and that goes in the memory, and that starts building your relationships and how you see people with how your parents were and what you experienced love was. And if you experience love as abuse, you'll continue carrying on this process, justifying abuse as like the person's going to do better. If you experience, and it's all these different things until you turn about 26 to 28.
Yeah.
That's when now you're fully developed. All of these on top of the genetical stuff, on top of like which religion you grew up in and what rules they've taught you, and all of these things start bringing up a human. But there's an aspect of it where we all have different personality traits and different things that we're just born with. Sometimes it's not taught to us. And this is where people rely on astrology and kind of connect to that because they can see the similar patterns of those behaviors. Yeah. Like you have a kid, there's a kid I'm working with who's like very competitive. Like this kid is just naturally, everything is a competition. He's 7 years old and everything, just saying hi is a competition. Like how does that person say, I want to say it better. I want to do it better. So with a kid like that, you have to kind of teach them how to navigate competition, that competitive side, that like rush to win, right? Instead of shaming them, you teach them how to make something of themselves because it's a great quality to have. But at the same time, how not to like be judgmental or over pushy and like get angry when things don't work out your way and all of these things. And every one of us have these different personality traits that you start seeing in children once they get to 4 or 5. You start seeing their different stubbornness, the way they know how to manipulate. Some kids really know how to manipulate and they're very intelligent to get what they want, and having to hold boundaries, versus another one doesn't. They feel more shy and they don't really know how to communicate, but they do know how to like do other things. And you have to watch all of that as a parent, which being a parent is a fucking hard ass job, man.
Yeah, it's definitely a very challenging one to say the least.
It is. Did that answer the question?
Yeah, very, very well. Yes, ma'am. I knew you were going to handle these questions very well.
Thank you.
Okay, let me read over these real quick.
How did you do it as a parent?
You know, I took from what I learned and what felt comfortable to me. So I grew up in a very unhealthy household.
Yeah.
But I also had healthy things around me that made me feel happy and I liked it. So then I grabbed onto those and I was like, I want my life to look like that. Yeah. So there was like bits and pieces of everybody that I came across in life, and I was like, oh, you know what? I like the way that feels. I like the way that looks. Like I want to grab a little piece of that and kind of piece it into my life. And then when I had kids, I knew what I didn't want them to go through. And that's when gentle parenting came in, and really focusing on their emotions and kind of just teaching them, because I feel like most of us were raised in an aspect of not being seen as kids.
Yeah.
And we didn't have the right to have an opinion or anything. So that's something that I didn't want to implement in my kids, because kids are very smart.
Oh my God, yeah.
Very smart.
Yes.
And for our generations before us to sit here and say that kids didn't have a word or a say in anything when they were probably more smarter than the adults was so
you're trying to include them in decision making.
So I mean, but then there's a barrier with that. Like you said, there's so many different layers to raising a kid, because you can't overly do it, because then if you overly do it, then it makes them feel like they are an adult and they still have to understand that they're a child. It's very
I think that's
many layers.
I love that you say that, because that's the piece that's gotten so confusing nowadays for parents. So many parents get so confused with all these different suggestions and things of like gentle parenting and like how to communicate your emotions and how to like teach them all these things and how to give them independence. And then you also have parents that are like super constantly worried about like, I don't want my child to experience any painful thing.
But see, and then you can't have that, because then you're suffocating them. I mean, a kid, you kind of have to take yourself back to when you were a child and what you experienced. And at the end of the day, everyone has to learn life.
Yeah.
As parents, we're here to teach you and to guide you. I'm going to allow you to make your own decisions and hopefully direct you in a way where you're not making a mistake. But then I also have to understand that you do have to make mistakes in order to learn. And that's how we grow, because even as adults, we make mistakes, we learn from it, and then we're not gonna ever do it again. Exactly. If we choose to not repeat the same patterns.
If we choose to want to do it. And I think this is the piece where a lot of parents in the office, I have to do a lot of work with parents and remind them, especially the ones that come with like little kids with like 4, 5, 6. I'm like, first of all, they're 5 years of memories, 5 years of experiences. So go back to the past 5 years and take a look at all the things that you can remember that is in their memory, and that's what's in there. And don't give them, you still have to teach them discipline. You still have to teach them self-control, because whatever you get at 4, 5, 6, you're going to get at 14, 15, 16. Yeah. Right? It really, we do replay our lives over and over again. And that's kind of where we have to learn in a new stage of life. Even as adults, we replay our lives over and over again. And we have to learn how to rediscipline ourselves. We have to learn how to re-regulate ourselves, right? So with parents, a lot of times I'm like, you're not trying to teach them so much about like intelligence and all these things, but you want to teach them how to listen, follow rules, right? Listen how to when someone holds a boundary with you, you can't let them keep crossing it because they're cute or because they're crying or because they're screaming in the middle of the grocery store and you're like, I don't want to deal with the embarrassment. Like, as a parent during those phases, you have to really...
But I think over time, a society has implemented that, because it's consistent with kids in regulating their emotions, right? Like, we have to learn how to regulate our emotions.
Yeah.
But why is it that society has made it a thing like, oh, if your kid is screaming and crying, like, and this is where we've become so divided and not a community, because we know this is going to happen with a child. So how do we help this mother who is having a hard time regulating her emotions because we're going through postpartum, which most women do? And then she has a crying child in a store, where the shame comes in because society has implemented that. Yeah. It's like, here, how can we help you?
One of the things that I tell parents, because they're like, what am I supposed to do? People are judging me, or someone will like look at me. I'm like, let the judgmental be unhealthy.
Yeah, it's easy to hear, but implementing that, if you're not a person who can do that, then it's something hard. I'm sure over time it can be developed.
It's practice.
But I want to go back to what you said about the fundamentals of putting in children is I think we've become overwhelmed with how to raise a child instead of like the basic fundamentals of what criteria need to go into a child in order to develop that.
Yes.
And making sure that you're consistent with it.
Yes. One of the things is it really is the fundamentals is discipline. It's knowing how to like hear no, knowing how to accept you're not going to get what you want, knowing how to be with other children and socializing is one of the things that with fundamentals, when your kid is in a certain school, let them socialize with everybody. Let them learn how to be angry and how to apologize for their wrong behaviors. Let all of these things that happen, like if you see a puppy litter, a bunch of puppies that are in the same cage together, they fight, they sleep, they make up, they play, they fight again, they learn how to they set boundaries with each other and they learn how to respect it. Human children are very similar, right? It's like we've kind of made it as if we are so special and everything we have to be catered to these like small tiny things to always be perfect. You can't be perfect if you're only 5 years old and you haven't experienced anything in life and you don't know how to be angry and you don't know how not to get what you want. Like that's the time where the discipline is the most important, teaching them, saying no, setting consequences.
Discipline, consequences, being comfortable within yourself. But I mean, that all comes into play with what you're going to experience in life.
Yeah.
And you have to, as a parent, you can't force yourself into everything because you have to allow them to have that confidence to figure it out, to solve the problem. And that's how they build that memory in their mind of like, oh, okay, like, well, I did this once and it kind of worked out a little bit this way. Probably could have did it a little bit better. Or just even as a parent, because I mean, children's minds don't go to that extent of like solving a problem. So that's when, as a parent, you intervene and be like, hey, so I noticed this. That was great. Maybe next time we'll do it this way. But it just goes back down to the basic fundamentals and then guiding them through.
Yeah. And sometimes when they, like, let's say, for example, they've had the experience of, like, if you have a really hyper child or a really happy child that's always wanting to be busy, you've had the experience where your child has grabbed the marker and, like, colored all over your white walls, right? And some parents are more nonchalant about it and they're more go with the flow. We have different types of humans that exist, right? And there's no judgment on any kind. There might be a parent or a human that's like, I need my walls to be clean. That's a no. You cannot color on the walls. But the kid's already done it, right? You're better off letting that kid finish that job. Let them do what they need to do. But then also sit them down and say, no more. We're not doing this anymore. And the next time you do it, this is what's going to happen. And let them do it again. Expect them to do it again because they don't fully understand the next time you do it, this is what's going to happen, right? So the next time they do it, you take the marker out of their hand and you say, I told you, you do this, this is what's going to happen. They're going to scream bloody murder because the first time you let them do it. So for now, it's a little confusing. That's okay. It's okay for your children to be confused. It's totally okay. Parents are always like, they can't be confused. No, it's okay for them to be confused. And you tell them the next time you do it again, this same exact consequence. And it has to be a consequence that's painful enough that they are screaming, that it really affects them, that it makes them sad, that it makes them angry, that it makes them think not to do that again. And if they do it again, you keep holding that consequence and you keep bringing it back to the next time you see the marker in their hand and you watch them going towards the wall. Instead of saying no, you ask them, so what do you think is going to happen when you do that? What's happened last time? So now you're teaching them
to remember consequences
and how to move forward. And that way, when they're teenagers, their brain has already created the neural pathways on how to do that when it comes to, like, let's say this teenager decides to try drugs and they have an intense consequence, because every teenager does. They end up throwing up. They don't know their limits, right? If they smoke weed or drink alcohol, hopefully those are the main two drugs that exist rather than the fentanyl and all the other stuff. But if they do too much, they're going to get really, really sick. And hopefully you have a really good relationship that they call you and they're willing to face your anger. And you're like, okay, well, this is what it's going to feel like next time. So think about, so you've already taught them how to do that, rather than you kind of let them, you do all these things of like, I don't want my child to be sad. I want my child to experience all these things. I want my child to do this. And so you're not teaching them how to be responsible when they get to the age where they don't have fear. They have intense impulsivity. That's teenager, right? You're rebellious. That's the phase of all the, like, you're adventurous, you are curious, you, like, don't want to follow the rules, you want to break the rules, and that's when a lot of tough lessons happen. And then you go another round in your 20s, and that's another tough lesson. But as a parent, the early development, and that's when there are parents that are going through postpartum because they've given birth to another child while another child is in early development. That's when the community matters. Yeah. Right? Absolutely. There's so many experiences of parents are like, I was at the grocery store and my child was screaming bloody murder, and this one's crying and I was crying, and this woman came and just helped and just calmed my kid down and looked at me and said, it's okay, and that's okay. Unfortunately, there are people that won't do that and they'll judge. But then again, I, like, try to really remind people, if someone's judging, dude, that's their shit. Yeah. That is not you. And I know it's hard not to feel it in that moment because you're judging yourself as a person in that sad place, and your hormones are all over the place and you're all over the place. But in any situation, if there's a person judging you, that's that. They don't know you, and they're just judging you based off of what's happening, bro. That's your shit. Like, I'm sorry.
I feel like if society hasn't really implemented to be such a foreign thing, then we wouldn't be in this position, because it's not foreign. Because if we think back, and I really don't even know, I would have to go back into history to understand where it even began. But I'm like, we used to once upon a time be a community and be there for our women.
Yeah. That women got together. Women took care of the children. And I think this is a thing where society has become more and more developed. And there was one of the things that I think is, like, the movement of women wanting to find their equality was because we were not treated well. Right. There was a time frame where we were, they had created competition within women. They had segregated women, right? One's superior, one's inferior, and that's a ridiculous time frame. But all of that independence, and then what I find so interesting is we're so obsessed with something that we created, money, and now we've screwed ourselves with that concept. Like, we need two people to have a job in a household to be able to keep the roof over our head and feed.
They have divided us significantly. I'm like, even women, men, it's just everyone is against each other, and there's just no form of community. And in reality, if we really take out what's implementing it, we wouldn't have any issues. I mean, we would still have issues, but I don't think it would be to the extent of dividing if we had the proper leader. Because I feel like as humans, we need someone to lead us.
Yeah, well,
in a sense.
I think so. Well, it depends, because we have different intelligent levels, right? And you have different people, and we're always going to have those the unhealthy people. Unfortunately, we're always going to have people that aren't willing to work on generational trauma, or they just follow the norm. They'd, like, rather follow rather than do something. So in a sense, yes, and every animal kingdom has one that leads, no matter what. It's just it's all over the world, this problem.
Yeah.
The segregation of humanity and the segregation of the type of people, and whether it's due to money, like your wealth level, and like in India, there's like the poorest are looked down on, the richest are different religions. You can look at skin color, you can use anything, you can use language, you can use hair, you can use body type, you can use anything to say you look at yourself better than the other person. And we've done that in, at least in the American culture, for sure. And it's American culture spread worldwide. For whatever reason, it was like this, like the way every country wanted to be.
I know.
Right? And at a time we were a democracy, and it was really nice, and we lived a much healthier life, although we were never really always free. The concept of freedom wasn't really always there for everybody, unfortunately. But all of those, like the way we've created this life where everything is about money and everyone is trying to survive. Our survival is money. It's no longer protecting ourselves and bringing wood and all of that stuff. And so women now is also like, you need to be perfect and you need to handle this a different way, or your child is screaming. Like, I don't know why your child is screaming. My child would never scream. And it's like, well, and then it's like, I've heard it so many times where it's like, it's definitely because of the way they raised them. How do you know? How do you know what's happening in that household?
Like
who gives you the right to assume and judge what's happening in another person's household? And I actually looked at that woman and I was like, I wonder what goes on in your household, because if you're judging another person, I can't imagine what you're doing in your household and how your children feel about you. She did not like that comment.
I'm sure she did not. Okay. So I'm trying to, these are all really good questions. I think I'm going to go with this one. Okay. How does emotional intelligence impact mental health, and what practical strategies can people use to develop and implement their emotional awareness?
Boom. Mindfulness. Mindfulness is hands down the best way to learn emotional intelligence. And it's not meditation mindfulness, it's learning how to observe and describe and be present and learn the cues in your body. Our emotions communicate in our body with temperature, with our facial expressions, with body language. That's kind of how you feel it, with muscle tension, with heart rate. That's kind of like within your body, your brain and your body are communicating emotions through these forms, right? And the more you start being aware of what you're experiencing in your body, and the more you're able to breathe and describe it without judging it, like not saying I feel bad. I feel bad every time someone in sessions like, I feel bad. I'm like, I don't know what the fuck that feeling is. That's not a feeling. That's a judgment. One, like bad because people can be excited and feel uncomfortable. What's bad? I don't know what you mean by that. Being able to actually identify the emotion, which is really hard. And the more you're able to notice, like if your heart rate is going up and you're like, okay, I'm noticing my heart rate is going up, and I'm going to breathe in through my nose and take my time and slow down my breathing so I can regulate my heart rate. And then they can ask, okay, what's going on? What was it? Well, sometimes you might know the answer. Sometimes it might be like, oh, I saw that car. This happened. Maybe I was feeling anxious. Sometimes it's like, oh, I noticed that thought of losing that person and it made me sad. The more you're able to start noticing what emotion you're experiencing, the more you're going to learn the reactions you have to those emotions.
I'm going to ask the question while we're on topic here. What would you recommend individuals who are considering therapy but are not ready for therapy but want to learn these things? What would you consider for them?
I always say there's a workbook. It's called the Dialectical Behavioral Therapy Workbook. I'll put the link with the podcast. If you get that book and you practice, just read through it and practice what it says to you. There are worksheets that you can practice with it. This is for changing behaviors. One, there's a mindfulness portion that you can really understand and learn how to implement mindfulness. There's a bunch of worksheets in there. There's the distress tolerance portion. So for those that are really, really emotional people and they feel their emotions intensely and they don't know how to tolerate the discomfort that's in their body that comes with emotions, there's a bunch of skills that you can practice there. There's emotion regulation, where it teaches you about every single emotion, the function of the emotion, what experiences you have in your body, what each emotion communicates. All of this is based off of science and evidence and studies that have been done. And then there's the interpersonal effectiveness part, where it teaches you how to communicate, ask for your needs. So if anyone that isn't really ready to go talk to a stranger and ask about how to work on certain things and they want to start working on themselves, grab the Dialectical Behavioral Therapy Workbook. It's about $45. I personally don't recommend Amazon. Personally, I'm not a big fan of billionaires that aren't taking care of humanity, and we're pretty much paying for all their bills. So I've gone back to I try to go to bookstores as much as I can. I know Barnes and Noble doesn't have it in Barnes and Noble, so try your local bookstore if you can. If you're an Amazon person, listen, I'm not going to judge you. Buy it on Amazon. It's $45. But try a bookstore, and they should have it. That's the book that I would recommend.
Okay. From my personal experience, what really helped me out when I was in that time frame was a really good friend had recommended The Power of Now.
Oh, that's an amazing book.
And when I tell you, I'm like, even till this day, like when I'm going through something, I will be like, I'm turning it on, because I'm not a reader. I'll listen to an audio. So and every time I listen to that book, it hits something different every single time.
See, that book I really recommend reading that book.
Yes,
it's an amazing book to read or listen to. And the DBT skills book helps you learn how to implement what you learn in The Power of Now.
It was that book that helped me. Going back to where I asked this question when you were saying to realize your emotions, because a lot of people don't know how to identify the emotions that they're feeling. So in that book, I remember he had suggested that you kind of look at yourself from a third perspective of, okay, so you have this emotion, act like you're outside of your body and look and see what you're feeling and why are you feeling that.
Mindfulness.
And every time I have something come on, I'm like, okay, Tia, what are we feeling? Why are we feeling this? Did something trigger us? What was said? What was heard? What was and why? And it doesn't have to do with this moment right now, or is it something else
from development that you might not even remember? And that's totally okay too. And sometimes sometimes I tell people, I'm like, you don't need to know the why. Sometimes you know the why. Sometimes it's so clear and it's so relevant, and you know yourself better than anybody else. So if you're going to analyze, don't hand yourself to someone else to analyze in that moment. Try to analyze it yourself, right? Sometimes you don't know why, because there could be a smell that takes your brain back to a memory that you don't even know, but emotionally, that memory is emotionally really coming up, and it's like sending you signals, but you're like, I don't know why I'm feeling anxious, but this smell made me anxious. Your brain, smartest and dumbest organ.
Right. And I'm not opposed to, I don't think we utilize how much the movies that are created help us as children. Like Inside Out, I really personally feel like they made that for adults, because
Adriel says that too.
Hello. Core memories.
I know, right? Honestly, that's the thing. What we're learning, what we learned a lot in cartoons. And one of the things that I think like our generation of cartoons was really about like perseverance and pushing through, which I love that our generation really learned that. And ironically, this is where sometimes I'm like, things happen for a reason, and maybe the spirits and life and earth knew later, or God knew later that we needed it. Millennials really needed that perseverance lessons, right?
Yes.
And I think the newer kids, I would love for the cartoons to sometimes be a little bit more fun and not always so educational perspective. And some of the educational, kind of going back to how it's okay for things to not work out, how to help children learn how to think to get themselves move forward, how to like motivate themselves to move forward. It's funny, I was having this conversation with another person about, it was more about cultures and other things, and this was outside when I was walking the other day. And they asked me, what do you think about a specific culture? And I was like, I can't tell you, because what I learned about it is based off of what it's been taught to me. Exactly. I've never been inside of that culture. I can't even
answer your question.
So I can answer it based off of what a fake TV show taught me.
And then my other question is why is that? What came across there? I always think about others perceptions of what made you ask that question.
It was a conversation about usage of certain words in certain cultures, and I was like, I can't really talk about another culture using other words because it's
not my culture.
Yeah, it's not mine. Know. And also, like, I know what's in my memory. What's in my memory is based off of, like, one, the socioeconomic where I lived, the type of TV shows I watched, all of these things are also part of my development and my memory, right? I can answer questions. Like, I can talk about the Indian culture, but I can talk about the Indian culture from what I have been taught by these medias that I personally don't use as facts. They're entertainment. They're not facts, right? Like TV shows, and they're all made for entertainment. They're not TikTok. It's made for entertainment. Social media, entertainment. They're not made for education. Education is put yourself in a situation and experience it and ask people and be curious. Right. Education is teach it in schools, which the American education system has not been the greatest for a very, very long time. We have developed dumb people. That's one of the problems in our country. We're not smart people. We're not educated people. Our education system sucks, really. And the whole country is not being educated on the same topics. The whole country, like you walk into a school in Michigan and you walk into a school in LA, and our books are different. What they're teaching in history is different. American history looks different. Like
they're taking history away.
Even in LA, when I grew up, I went to a private school because I got a scholarship. I went to a private school. We had Black History education for all of Black History Month. We had Native American education. We had education around what happened to Asians and Irish people. You walk into a public school in LA, they don't have Black history education. That's part of the American history. How do you not have American history education in public schools? That's what, or like even about Native Americans and all of these things. We're not educating on the things that matter.
Yeah, I mean, matterance, and I mean, even when they did have it, it still wasn't the truth.
Yeah, there's that.
So I'm like, it's still a very long history of the reality of things and what they wanted to implement to make themselves look good.
Even today, we're still not teaching about the gay rights movement, the women's rights movement, the Black rights movement.
They're only gonna put a little piece here. We'll tell you about it. And
oh yeah, the gay rights is not going to go into the books anytime soon from the looks of it. That's LGBTQ plus is not going in history. It is, unfortunately, which again, we are, and even putting history aside, history is one topic. Mathematics, we are teaching, like you compare an algebra 2 class in United States of America and an algebra 2 class in any other country in Europe, our kids are they're not gonna keep up.
No.
Science, we are not part of the issue with children and development in our country is one, we're not teaching them emotional intelligence. They are extremely entitled and everything is being given to them. So they don't really know how to face consequences. They don't know how to face unknowns. Their boundaries, it's not everybody, but boundaries are difficult.
Yeah.
And our school system is not a school system that will develop healthy, functioning children for the future.
Yeah.
But we are out of time with that one.
We are.
So Tia, thank you for coming in today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
It was a pleasure. I love these conversations. We're gonna have to do part 2 because we only got to 2 and I have like 10.
You're coming back.
Yeah, we need a
2-hour session.
We need a 2-hour.
I love it. Well, thank you for
like,
coming.
You know how we get.
I know.
There's one person that you can rely on to get in-depth questions.
I got you, boo.
Yeah.
You're my boo. Happy Mother's Day.
Thank you.
Goodbye.